to First Things First. Friday morning here in New York City. I'm Jenna Wolfe. That's the Hall of Famer, Cris Carter. This is Nick Wright. What are you showing?
We had to do it, Jenna. We predicted the Raptors in 7. On the show, we mentioned 6.
Yep.
We had to bring a little pop with the dinosaurs with Jenna's jacket.
Oh.
She's representing Toronto and the whole country of Canada.
Good stuff.
Props to my partners, Cris Carter, Jenna Wolfe.
I never get the
Cris was going to go.
handshake.
Cris really wanted to go Raptors in 7. In fact, that's why it said on the screen Raptors in 7. Jenna Wolfe was adamant. I think they get it done in 6. I think they close out Oracle with a big L for the Warriors.
Guys, I had this outfit picked out months ago. I knew it would be the Raptors.
Okay.
I knew it would be in 6.
Meanwhile, I said 6 weeks ago the Warriors are going to lose in the finals. Now, I said it was to the Bucks, and they didn't get there, but I feel like I get partial credit.
Right, that's why you wore green for the Bucks.
Exactly.
Now that we've all patted ourselves on the back for
it.
appropriate reasons, let us start because we do have a big show today. Only one place to start, and it is with the NBA Finals. Raptors at Warriors Game 6. Let's pick this one up in the third when Klay Thompson takes an awkward fall. It did not look good. He was in a lot of pain, had to leave the game with what we learned was a torn ACL, and he was playing great up to that point, 30 points, 32 minutes. Fast forward to the fourth. Warriors still in this, down just one. Steph Curry, a shot to take the lead here. He can't get it to go. Warriors try but cannot gather the rebound. Fans can't believe it. Kerr and Steph can't believe it. Oh, Raptors, they believe it. They go on to win Game 6, 114-110. The Toronto Raptors are your NBA champions. First title in franchise history. Kawhi Leonard winning his second Finals MVP. Oh, Canada, indeed. Much more now from Kawhi after the win.
Came in with the right mindset. Let's go out and win ball games. I text Kyle probably a day later or the day that I got traded and told him, let's go out and do something special. I know your best friend left. I know you're mad, but, let's make this thing work out. And we're here today.
I think a lot has been, proven about who we are as a team and the fight that we have and all the adversity that we dealt with and, this entire playoff run and, it's a one-possession game to keep our season alive tonight. So we'll be thinking about this one. It's tough, but our DNA and who we are and the character that we have on this team, I wouldn't bet against us, being back on the stage, next year and going forward.
All right, there's a lot to get to here. This was a great game. If it was going to be the last game, it's a good thing it was such a good game. How did they do it, Nick? How did the Raptors dethrone the Warriors?
All right, so for this game specifically, it was a perfect Raptor game in this regard. Just a contribution from everyone that mattered. Kyle Lowry was spectacular in the first quarter. Serge Ibaka took care of the second. Kawhi Leonard took care of the third. Fred VanVleet was the hero of the fourth, and who's the name we haven't mentioned? Pascal Siakam with the biggest bucket in Raptors history, up one to push it to a three-point game with about 35 seconds left. That's how they did it. Nick Nurse, after I thought making some major coaching errors, one in particular in Game 5. You saw no hangover. I was worried all week about the hangover for the Raptors. None from him, none from his team. They didn't while the Warriors crowd was outstanding throughout, they didn't let it intimidate them. Kyle Lowry was critical in that regard. And they were able to close out the Warriors in their building in a game where Kawhi Leonard wasn't spectacular. He was good, but not the A+ we'd seen from him throughout the postseason. So that's how they won Game 6. But the way they got to Game 6, the way they got to the finals, the way they got the second-best record in the league was having one of the very best players in the league in Kawhi Leonard and having him be sensational from the opening night of the playoffs up until the final night of the playoffs. That Masai Ujiri's team building, the risky but now it looks very fortuitous decision to move on from the Coach of the Year, Dwayne Casey, to bring in Nick Nurse.
Yeah.
We've now had, of the last 5 NBA champions, 3 of them have been rookie head coaches, Kerr, Lou, Nurse. All of that led to this moment last night where the Raptors have the greatest moment in Canadian basketball history since a Canadian James Naismith invented the sport.
And the biggest one, to bring Kawhi knowing it could very well just be a year and to make the absolute most of what you could do bringing a guy in for what you think could be just a year.
He did beyond what they even expected. When Kawhi Leonard comes there, And that was a great soundbite, him texting Kyle Lowry after, man, he was really disappointed. They trade his best friend after they had as good as you could have as a franchise without being a champion. LeBron James destroyed those dreams a number of times. And for Kawhi to get them to the NBA Finals, that was a real goal. No one's goal is for them to be world champs. Can they get there, get through the East, and play against the Golden State Warriors, who everyone had predicted that they would three-peat? So not only them getting there, them not being able to be satisfied, but ultimately, how did they have the second best record in the NBA this year? It was a collective effort. And we got to give Nick Nurse credit because the adjustments that he made in all 4 series that he was in, they got more talent than Orlando. But they lost the first game. And he made adjustments series after series. And Fred VanVleet, putting him in the starting lineup for the second half, and you could see how it paid out, not only defensively on Steph, but offensively in Steph. Now they had a go-to besides Kawhi Leonard and allowing him to the freedom to either go off the bounce or go to a pick and roll. The number one play they had in that fourth quarter was VanVleet in a pick and roll against the guards of Golden State. And to me, that was the difference in game number 6. That's how they were able to close out Oracle and the overall shooting behind the arc. The analytics, they're right. This game is better with the three-point shot in Toronto. And we said there's no way Golden State can make 23s the way they did in game 5. They come out in this game and the Raptors outshot them behind the three-point mark. To me, that was the decisive advantage.
And just real quick on Fred VanVleet before you jump back in, I wanted him benched. I thought that he was dead man walking after the Philly series, the beginning of the Bucks series. He had been so critical to their success over the last couple of years, but he was averaging 3 points a game on single-digit three-point percentage. And he had the baby. He ends up finding himself again, and he all of a sudden gets a Finals MVP vote. He all of a sudden is critical in slowing down Stephen Curry in the biggest quarter in Raptors history. He's out there, the one guy, because the Raptors, it would appear that the Warriors were focusing on Kawhi, making other guys try to beat him, and it was a lot of possessions where there's 7 on the shot clock. They're 34 feet from the basket with nothing going. FVV kept bailing them out, a guy who his coach had to keep putting out there, keep having faith in. I thought that Jeremy Lin might replace him in round number 2, and he had a great moment. That's a cumulative effort.
Look, you can't take anything away from what the Raptors did. They had a fantastic postseason run and a fantastic finals run. But the injuries to Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant were demoralizing. Absolutely. How much did that factor in to the Raptors winning or to the Warriors losing?
Well, it factors into our ultimate decision. Why do you pick the Raptors? Because I didn't believe KD was going to be there. Injuries are a part of sport. But when we tell the story in 5 years, when we tell the story in 10 years, how much will the injuries be a part of it? It won't be that much a part of it. It will be a footnote. Championships are championships. When you look at this game of basketball that is dominated in North America, in the United States, and to have the Golden State Warriors, since Michael Jordan's 2 three-peats, this is the best basketball team that I have seen, the best collection of talent that I've seen. And for Toronto Raptors, no matter what, there is no excuses. Man, they got it done. They got it because the Warriors, it was on the board. They were still good enough to beat the Raptors without KD. But they weren't able to beat them if Boogie Cousins wasn't going to be good, if Draymond wasn't going to be good, Iggy was going to have to be spectacular, and we saw what we got from Klay. So, yes, you can't look at this 6-game series and say, oh, man, it would have been different if they weren't been injured. Of course it would have. This is one of the most talented teams that we've ever seen. But did the Raptors take advantage of it? Did they fold under the pressure? People, I told you, that crowd, man, did they have something to do with it? When it comes down to it, no. They don't play a role in making shots and getting defensive stops. So, man, great collective effort by Toronto, and it all boils down to one decision. And that decision for their general manager to go out and rent a guy who at that time was, man, hands off. I don't want him, don't want to deal with him. All the narratives that people had created about him, how he forced his way out of San Antonio, all those things, false. He took the chance. Kawhi reached out to his teammates. He was a great teammate there for Toronto. So, man, yes, that is a part of it. Injuries are a part of sports. They couldn't overcome them.
On the injuries front, would this series have gone differently if Kevin Durant were fully healthy, if Klay Thompson doesn't get hurt, if Boogie Thompson didn't get hurt in the first round of the playoffs? Probably. And for the Warriors, when we look at their finals losses, this is one that they can say, man, injuries got us. And much like the Cavs in 2015 can say, man, injuries got us. But I don't think it's fair for the champion, for the winner, to discount what they did because the opponent was injured. Because there's an interesting perspective on it. And I had never thought of it, but one of the biggest Warriors fans I follow on Twitter, who's a great writer, a guy named Ezekiel Kwaku, made this point. In 2016, if in Game 4, Steph Curry had gotten hurt, blown out his knee, and then the Cavs go on to win games 5, 6, 7, we'd say, oh, well, Steph wasn't there. But they ended up winning 5, 6, 7, even though he was there. Point being, maybe if Durant played, Raptors still win. Maybe if Klay never goes down, Raptors still win. We don't know what they would have been able to do against a fully healthy team. So while for the Warriors, it's not an excuse, it's an explanation why they didn't win. For the Raptors, they get full credit for their title.
Toronto Raptors played the Golden State Warriors 8 times this season. They won 6 of those games.
Yep.
They won 4 games in Oracle.
Yep.
Okay, so they are the right team to be able to close it down. They are the team that should be crowned champion, and it just speaks to the NBA. I tweeted last night, man, they used to have this commercial. We grew up with the NBA, and all these stars just yelling into the camera. The NBA is fantastic. And last night, man, it capped it off. Congratulations to Toronto.
Good win for the Toronto Raptors. All right, Game 6, Draymond hits Klay in transition, pulls up, drills one from beyond the arc.
Klay, part of the tragedy of Klay's injury last night was he was Game 6 Klay once again. Oh, Game 6, season on the line. Watch me bust some heads. He was unbelievable.
This is a 1-on-3 fast break.
Right.
Every coach in the world is saying, bad shot, bad shot. Oh, Klay, that's okay.
I mean, he's fading to his right. Oh, my goodness.
All right, finally, Fred VanVleet shaking Quinn Cook, nailing the tray.
Indecision here. We had a lot of lineups, Nick, you were concerned about. A lot of players unfamiliar. Him and Draymond not understanding who's going to take the guard over the top. Draymond thought he was going to have a bounce pass here. They leave him wide open. Another critical 3 by VanVleet.
In the 36 minutes Quinn Cook wasn't on the court, the Warriors won by 12. In the 12 minutes he was, they lost by 16.
Wow. All right, Warriors lost more than just the game and the series last night. They lost Klay Thompson as well. He suffered a torn ACL in the third quarter of the Game 6 loss. He is now likely out until February or March of 2020. Warriors lost KD and Klay both to major injuries in back-to-back games. Here's Steph Curry on his fallen Splash brother.
You think about the person and the guy and how much he loves to play the game, and that's the only thoughts you have. It's really not about, what it means in terms of playing basketball. It's just I'm more concerned about him as an individual and hoping that he's all right.
Everybody thinks it's kind of end of us. That's just not smart. We're not done yet. We lost this year. Clearly just wasn't our year. But it's how the cookie crumbles sometimes. But, yeah. I hear a lot of that noise. It's the end of a run and all that jazz. I don't see it happening, though.
All right, CC, let's piggyback off what Draymond was alluding to there. How much does Klay's injury now change the future for this Golden State team?
It definitely changes their future for next season. First, I think about Danny Green. He challenges Klay. Klay has a breakaway. Danny Green challenges him. It's a very clean play. He goes after the ball. The reason why Klay tears his ACL was because he tried to hold on to the rim. He couldn't hold on to the rim because of his momentum. And if he had tried to dunk it with one hand, which most NBA players are able to land, but his inability to be able to hold on to the rim, that's what caused him on the fall.
Yep.
Yes, and you could see that his knee buckled there instantly. So Danny Green, for those out there thinking it's a dirty play, no, it's not a dirty play. Klay didn't think it was a dirty play. Him and Danny Green had an exchange afterward. Danny Green was like, man, I'm sorry you got hurt. And Klay was like, yeah, it was a clean basketball play. But Klay is a great athlete. He's avoided injury, so I expect him to make a full recovery. But they're out of it for next year. I don't care what Vegas says as far as their chances of winning. And the reason why is because, just like we thought, KD July 1st is going to be out of there. Klay is going to be on the rack. How are they going to score points? How are they going to play the Warriors style that they play? You think Iggy's going to come back and be able to score 20 points next year? You think Draymond? Because you see when Draymond has the ball in his hand, he can be a liability. He is a good passer, but the more you put the ball in his hand, the more apt he is to turn the ball over. So they have to recreate how they're going to play basketball. And now Steph Curry is getting ready to play basketball in the NBA like when he was at Davidson. And they was double teaming him, making him force the ball out of his hand, because that's what last night's game looked like. I hadn't seen Steph Curry like that since I watched him in the NCAA tournament. And I was wondering, wow, how'd this kid get to Davidson?
Remember, and Chris Mannix will be on the show later, remember Chris Mannix, he said the night Steph had 47, what I thought was the best game of his career, NBA Finals, game number 4 in the loss, the game without Klay, obviously no KD. Mannix said that Steph reminded you that if he were on Orlando, he would score 30, 35 a night and be a top 3 MVP candidate. He's going to have a chance to prove it next year. That's what it means for the Warriors next year. And for the Warriors as far as next postseason, if they get there, which I think they probably could get there, by the time Klay plays again, Steph's going to be 32. Klay's going to be 30 coming off an ACL. Draymond's going to be 30. And Andre Iguodala is going to be 36. One of there are not many problems with going to the finals every year, but one of them is this. You don't got no great young players come through the pipeline. Their best young players probably Jordan Bell. They bought that pick from Chicago. They got into a weird staring match with Patrick McCaw. He now plays for Toronto. It's not like they have even their own guys that they've drafted. Oh, there's one. No, so for the Warriors for next year, they're not favorites in the West. They're not co-favorites in the West. They're not favorites for a top 4 seed.
So is this the end of the dynasty then for the Warriors? Does it end here?
I got a lot of respect for the Warriors, how they've done things, and they have dominated basketball for 5 years. I'm not going to say that dynasty is over yet. I'm going to give them the regular season. And when they come out and they have the 4th, 5th, 6th best record in the West next year, it still's not going to be over with. But when they lose in the playoffs next year, that's when it will be official. Klay will be back for them in the playoffs. So they still have a chance to knock off something. They're still going to have the Splash Brothers. But how they're able to add and the limitations around, and Nick, you have kept me abreast as far as what they can do financially, which is very, very limited. So this is a lot of what we saw last night is what we'll see next season.
I mean, the only way they can open themselves up financially is if they let KD walk and let Klay walk. And you can't do that to him. This guy, listen, you cannot not give Klay Thompson a max contract. You can't. He has been your best big game, back against the wall player of any of them. And he has shown the ability. They mentioned it in the broadcast last night. How many all-time, most three-pointers in a playoff game? Klay. Most points in a quarter in any game? Klay. He had 60. Didn't he have 60 points through 3 quarters? Didn't he have a game where he scored 60 on like 17 dribbles? I mean, the guy is, he's an unbelievable player. And yesterday, he tears his ACL, goes to the locker room. Someone shouts to him, "Hey, man, if you don't take these free throws, you're ineligible to come back in the game." Comes back out there, takes the free throws, tells Steve Kerr, "Give me 2 minutes, I'll be back." And then the next word Kerr gets, he's on crutches. But speaking of Kerr, do I think the dynasty's over? Yes. Does Steve Kerr think the dynasty's over? Unlike Draymond Green, here's what Steve Kerr said about these last 5 years, and it seems like he's talking about the past tense, not the present tense.
What I've witnessed as their coach over the last 5 years it is just an incredible combination of talent and character and commitment to each other. This just doesn't happen. It just, a group of guys like this don't come around together and do what they did over the last 5 years. And I've been lucky enough to that's what I told him in the locker room.
So he knows it.
You're right.
I mean, he now maybe in a couple years they're fully healthy, have a full season, but now everyone on the team that matters is 30 plus. Like, they're in a really rough spot. It was arguably as good of any 5-year run as any team's had in modern NBA history. But yeah, the KD injury, the Klay injury, losing, to me, that puts an end to it.
All right. right, moving on. So the Warriors lost more than just the game in the series last night. They lost Klay Thompson as well, suffering a torn ACL in the third quarter. Warriors have now lost KD and Klay to major injuries in back-to-back games. Nick, how does this impact Golden State's future?
Ain't going to be a sixth straight finals appearance. There no more, well, even when KD leaves, they're the favorites in the West. No, sir. No, no, no. And they got to be really careful, in my opinion. The one guy now who 5 straight years of 100-plus games, who's a scorer for them, Steph, they're going to rely on him a lot next year. You got to keep in mind, Steph, next year, turns 32, has a history of the ankle injuries. You can't overuse him during the regular season trying to stay afloat while Klay is out. So, no, it's crazy to say this. They'd have been so much better off, see, if they got swept. They got swept. KD doesn't pop his Achilles. Klay doesn't tear his ACL.
Yeah, and also you saw a little glimpse of if they decide to put Quinn Cook on the court with Steph, because Steph is a liability defensively. This was the one time they couldn't hide him, because Klay is the perfect partner, not only on the offensive end, but more on the defensive end. How hard does Steph have to work next year during the regular season playing defense, because Cook is not a good defender? Can they get someone to come in for the minimum to fill that 2-guard spot? Big blow not only to Klay, but bigger blow to Steph.
All right, finally, Kawhi Leonard took home his second Finals MVP last night. He becomes the third player ever to win Finals MVPs with multiple teams, joining Kareem and LeBron, like you mentioned, C. The first ever to win it in both conferences. Nick, did Kawhi show you he is the best player in the NBA?
Can I tweak the question just a bit?
Sure.
I think he showed the world. I might be the wrong person to ask on this. What, see?
No, that was just.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
That's like your fake phone call.
He gets
What?
the title.
I gotta go.
He gets the title. He gets
the title of
best player in the world. He's earned it.
That being said,
listen. We said going in the playoffs, there's a handful of guys that were the lone superstar on a team. If they led their team to a championship, with LeBron, the reigning best player in the world, not getting his team to the playoffs and dealing with an injury this year, they would get the title. He was on the list. Harden was on the list. Giannis was on the list. You could have argued Embiid was on the list. And he did it. And he did it going through Embiid, going through Giannis, going through Steph. KD didn't, KD, unfortunately for him, he was on the list where he could have done it through super extraordinary play, and he was doing that, but then he hurt himself, and then he really hurt himself. So, yes, if the title was up for grabs, and we all said it was, Kawhi went out and earned it. Now, if you're asking me, who do I think's better, LeBron or Kawhi, I still think it's LeBron.
Who do you think's better, Kawhi or KD?
Well, I have no idea about KD now. I mean, KD, what KD was or what he will be, because we don't know what he will be. If you're asking me this, who would I rather have for the next 5 years, Kawhi or KD? That's easy as can be. That's Kawhi, because I know what he'll be. So your guys, went out and did it. Well, I didn't think he could, and he went out and did it.
This is the thing. It's very, very strange now, because let's look where Kawhi was last year. We're like, man, is he ever going to come back from the quad injury? Look where KD was last year, on the top of the basketball world. Second Finals MVP. LeBron was a better player in the finals. He was amazing. He's deciding to go in free agency. LeBron tears his groin this year. KD snaps his Achilles. All right? And now we got Kawhi among them. He's the only one healthy. I just think it's an odd year. I think that Kawhi has earned the rep that we thought was going to be for Giannis, because if it was Giannis, we would be beating the drum. I don't think Nick would be saying LeBron's a better player than Giannis. I don't think he'd be saying
Giannis had done what Kawhi just did.
I don't think he'd be doing that. The Nick Wright that I know, he was on the Giannis train. It got stopped by Kawhi. But right now, and because of Kawhi's ability on the defensive end, Kawhi Leonard's the best basketball player in the world. If KD was healthy, if he didn't come back and snap it, I would be like, listen, this is hard for me to decide. I would be like, KD is the best basketball player. Going into the playoffs, I thought KD was the best basketball player. Now, he loses by default. But if he would have stayed out of the series and he was healthy going into free agency, I would be sitting here saying, even though Kawhi won the title, KD, and what I saw, KD is the best basketball player.
KD was playing the best basketball of his life. So when he could have he could have earned the title, I don't want to say by default, but by what he did leading up to the calf injury. Because the calf injury, we don't worry about lingering effects. We don't worry about, will he be the same guy next year?
But Achilles.
The Achilles, it's not only will he be the same guy, it's that he's going to miss basketball for over a calendar year. The way the reports are right now, though, Steve Kerr said it last night, he's like, Kevin going to be out next season. And so, I mean, I know he doesn't want to be out all of next season, but if you're out next season, you're actually out 15 months. You're out from June of 2019 until October of 2021. Of 2020, pardon me, but that's 15 months. So for KD, it's a tough spot, but Kawhi's done everything you could ask him to do. If Kawhi hasn't earned the title, the fake title that I love talking about so much, then it wasn't eligible for him to earn. Because he did everything you could possibly want him to do. Averaged almost a 30-point double-double. Led his team to the championship. Won Finals MVP. Was spectacular against the guy who's going to win league MVP defensively in the previous round. Mm-hmm. He did everything you could possibly ask him to do. Led his team to 3 wins in Oracle. So he's earned it, even if my eye test might feel a little differently.
All right, let's move on. Talk about the Warriors now. Steph Curry had a chance to take the lead with less than 10 seconds to go last night, but missed an open 3. Raptors went on to win the game and, more importantly, the NBA title. Steph talked about his final shot after the game.
The shot was one I take 10 out of 10 times, and, we ran a play that was kind of, we got a decent look off of, kind of a bobble catch, and I could see the rim, so I shot it. I'll live with that. We always talk about that, myself and Klay, in terms of shots that we take. You live with it, and I'd shoot that shot every day of the week.
See, what did you make of Steph missing the potential game winner there?
I mean, he just missed a shot. He missed a shot that he typically can make. Steve Kerr ran a great set. They run a back screen for Draymond, throw it to the corner, and then they run a back pick for Steph, allow him to loop around to be able to get. That's an open look in NBA, and Steph typically is going to knock it down. So they had an opportunity, but that don't mean they were going to win the game. There was 8 seconds on the clock. There's still a lot of time to be, but they did give themselves an opportunity. If you look at how everything was supposed to play out, they weren't supposed to win this game. Man, they lost KD in Game 5. They lose Klay in Game number 6. And Steph didn't play a great game. Man, this was almost like college. I mean, I thought I was looking at college at the end, where they were trying to take the ball off his hand, they were trapping him, and they were challenging the other Warriors. But Steve Kerr and the staff, you got to give them credit. They did give themselves an opportunity to force a game number 7, Nick.
And listen, I'm not going to kill Steph for that final shot. The game as a whole is a different story, and I'll get to that in a second. But that final shot, first of all, is a brilliant out-of-bounds play Steve Kerr and Mike Brown drew up. It looked like the ball potentially could go out of bounds. You saw Serge Ibaka kind of pause and look at it, which is exactly what they wanted to have happen, because it gave Serge gets lost for a second. Steph gets a good look. Now, they didn't need a 3, but they drew it up for a 3 anyway because they thought they could get a cleaner look at it, and they did get a clean look at it. And when Steph says you'll live with it, you will live with it. You got a good shot, you live with the results. What's tough for Steph is he's had to live with a bunch of these with none of them ever going in. He's now shot 9 of these in the playoffs, final 24 seconds, to take the lead. He's 0 for 9. And he's shot, I think, 6 of them in the final 10 seconds, 0 for 6.
And the irony to it all, even though he's 0 for 9, no one would say Steph's not a clutch player.
100%. And so that's why I said I'm not going to kill him at all for the shot. Those are tough shots, man. Like, game-winning shots in the playoffs are tough shots in any circumstance.
I got to take you back a little bit. You got to. That's a tough shot for a normal. That's not a tough shot for Steph Curry.
But even Steph Curry, the greatest three-point shooter we've ever seen.
That shot right there is not a tough shot for him.
It's not a tough shot, but the odds of making it are 45%. You know what I mean? 50, we want to call it 50%. My point is...
He is the greatest shooter that's ever dribbled or shot a basketball.
Right, and for his career, he's around 40% on threes. That's even if we're going to say that's an easier than usual 3, which I don't think it is. Like, so even when you're a great three-point shooter, it's one of the downsides, too, in a game-winning situation when you don't have to shooting a 3, is that a great three-point shot, unless it's wide open set, it's more likely than not you're not going to make it. But for the game... I said yesterday, man, they needed 85 points, see, from Steph, Klay, and somebody else. The somebody else was Iguodala. He gave you 22. Klay was sensational with 30. Draymond, I know he had a bunch of turnovers. He had almost half the team's rebounds, almost half the team's assists. 11 points, 18 rebounds, 13 assists. Of their big four, the guy who had the worst game was Steph. Of their big four, the guy who didn't hold up his end last night more than anybody was Steph. And that, to me...
I debate you on that one. Draymond with 8 turnovers was worse than Steph.
But Dre did everything else for him.
There's a reason why, because they're offensively challenged, what Steph had to do was going to be monumental. Man, they're basically only guarding 2 people all night. That's why Iggy's able to get off. But Draymond, in his inability to be able to complete the offense or run the offense, to me, he played worse than Klay. And he gave up the big drive to Pascal at the end. Tried to go for a steal. Pascal gets the easy bunny.
But I want to ask you about Steph. So Steph Curry is now 3-2 in the finals. No finals MVP. Where does that leave his legacy? Does it impact his legacy?
It impacts his legacy in this regard. We talked before the series, if they win, if he wins finals MVP, it elevates him too. I don't think this series drops him any. I don't think he all of a sudden goes backwards. But he had a chance to, at the end of the series, be a no-doubter top 20 all-time player, arguably in the top 15. He would have every box you would need to check on the resume. Now he's still missing the one. And they lost this finals in a similar way they lost the 2016 finals, which was in the deciding game, Steph Curry didn't play very well. He was 6 for 9 in Game 17 in 2016. He was 6 for 17 last night. Both those games, he doesn't really get his three-point shot going. Like, that hurts him. And it doesn't downgrade him from where he was, but it's more the opportunity cost of what it could have been for him.
Yes, because it was set up for him, and you had talked about Steph potentially being a top NBA player. Now, can he get that without being a finals MVP?
Right.
And this is what it does, Jenna. It doesn't make you go down, but it makes people have to look at and explain, oh, he was in 5 finals? Wow, really? Which one of our great players have we had in 5 finals and they weren't the MVP? And they won 3 of them.
None of them.
So there you go. So now he's in a class of he's one of one. And where does it sit as far as NBA history? That's up to those who like to be able to make these lists and everything. But to me, it makes it hard for him to be a top all-time NBA player, top 10 all-time, if he's not an MVP in the finals.
How much wiggle room is there for him to, I don't know, raise up in your eyes a little? If he has to do everything by himself basically next year with no KD and no Klay, is that going to change your minds at all?
So this is what's the killer for
It's going to be like James Harden. What do we care? If you don't win no championships, don't nobody care.
And this is what's the killer for him. Assuming KD leaves, which we assume he will, Klay's hurt, the team's aging, is Steph Curry going to be in the NBA Finals again? Is he going to have a chance to fill in the one blank on his resume? That is now more up in the air than ever before.
And they had the opportunity. He had the opportunity. KD wanted to get the 3 with LeBron. Steph had an opportunity to get 4 and go up front in front of LeBron. Man, you have to be able to explain how many times he was there, how many times they won, and why. Why didn't Steph, for 2 weeks and 5 opportunities for 2 weeks, why couldn't he be the best player in the world? That's for the experts like Nick Wright and people to explain.
It's a tough one for him, and it's just he's such a great player.
Right.
And I thought he had the best game of his career in this series. And once again, he's going to go home without that other trophy, that one that Kawhi Leonard took home.
Welcome back to the show. Sports Illustrated senior writer Chris Mannix on very little sleep is joining us this morning.
When did you filed a column in the middle of the night, man?
Like 2 a.m. Yeah, but you guys are on less sleep as I am, but I am.
Extended handshake.
Welcome back, man.
Brother.
Welcome
it's a great
back.
columm. People should read it. SI.com.
All right.
Made a great contribution to the show this year, too.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
We got your review coming up.
Oh, it is. Okay. Is there a bonus involved?
Come into my office.
Let's take a look at how it all went down last night. Raptors at Warriors, Game 6. Pick this up in the third when Klay Thompson takes a very awkward fall. Did not look good. He had to leave the game in pain with what we learned later was a torn ACL. And he was playing great up until that point. 30 points in 32 minutes. All right, fast forward to the fourth. Warriors still down. But down just 1. Steph Curry a chance to take the lead, but he can't get it to go, and that would essentially end it. Fans can't believe it. Steve Kerr and Steph can't believe it. Raptors believe it. They win the game 114-110. Toronto Raptors, your NBA champions, first title in franchise history. Kawhi Leonard winning his second finals MVP, and oh, Canada, indeed. Chris Mannix, how remarkable was the Raptors dethroning Golden State this season?
Given the status of Kevin Durant, I don't think it was that remarkable. This Raptors team, with the addition of Kawhi Leonard, it enhanced them. But one of the things they had going for them all season long was that the core of a team that had been together for multiple years was intact. And when you have that kind of chemistry, even though LeBron had knocked you out year after year, you'd be able to incorporate a star player a little bit easier, even a second star player like a Marc Gasol a little bit easier, because you knew each other. You had an identity based on everything in years past. And once Durant went out of the lineup, I think it evened the odds completely with these two teams.
Well, and so it wasn't that surprising to you because Durant was out of there. But to me, it doesn't dampen how impressive it was.
No.
Because we cannot prove, we can have ideas, we can have opinions, we can't prove that the Raptors wouldn't have won the championship if Durant were healthy. Like, I think it's fair to do a little mini asterisk on finals losses based on injury, but not on finals wins. You know, we talk a lot about the 2015 finals where the Warriors went to 6 when the Cavs didn't have Kyrie or Kevin Love. We do not know if they would have, that they couldn't have beaten that Cavs team with Kyrie and Kevin Love. So while we might not hold that loss against LeBron and the Cavs, we shouldn't lessen the win for Golden State. Toronto, their ability to go 17-5 this year, in the 22 games Kawhi Leonard didn't play. Their ability to be 1-1 against Orlando, make adjustments, not lose another game in that series. To be down 2-1 to Philly, make adjustments, win it in 7. Down 0-2 to Milwaukee, make adjustments, win 4 straight. Tied 1-1 with Golden State, make adjustments, win 3 out of 4. That shows you depth. It shows you savvy veteran leadership and players and excellent coaching. And it shows you they were, over the course of this season, the best team in the league that went through a gauntlet to get to this get to this NBA.
I'm not going to overemphasize the KD injury or the other ones, because when Golden State won, I didn't overemphasize the injuries that they benefited from. Them being healthy helped them win the 3 titles that they did win. But let's talk about what Toronto did during the regular season, because this is a franchise that said, we're all in this year. We're taking a chance. When they trade for Gasol late in the season, how is he going to fit into this team that you talk about? Through the last several years, they developed this bond, this chemistry. They trade some of that chemistry. C.J. Miles, critical guy, shooting threes off the bench. They trade him away and a couple other pieces. They lose OG at the end, Anunoby off the bench. Man, that a powerful young player who could defend people like Kevin Durant, Klay. They end up losing him. Their ability to play a different style. Serge Ibaka, who's been a starter. That could have been a combustible situation. He's coming off the bench. They don't win that without him. Fred VanVleet, we get him off the street, not drafted. He hits an NBA record, 16 threes to beat Robert Horry and J.R. Smith. Man, they collectively, over the last 6 months, they have done things that champions would do. It just happens to be it's in Toronto.
I think, too, that the reason it's less surprising is that this Warriors team, their vulnerability was on the defensive end. I mean, they were 13th in defensive efficiency this year. All their previous finals years, they ranked in the top 5. That's what I was noticing down the stretch of this game. It wasn't that Steph missed a shot here or some of the guys committed turnovers, that they couldn't get stops. And that was a problem for this Warriors team all season long.
So then take it back to before the season started. When the season started, I don't think many people had Toronto as the team that was going all the way. We were talking about Giannis and what the Celtics were going to do and what the Sixers were going to do. And the Raptors were always just a team in the mix. How improbable was a run all the way up and beating the Warriors was it for the Toronto Raptors?
Jenna, I'll take a step further. Toronto was under the radar to a degree before the season started and before the playoffs started. I didn't see there weren't a lot of people saying Toronto's going to come out of the East.
Well, no, I think like I did, and everybody at SI did as well with our finals predictions.
Going into the playoffs, all
entering
of you?
the playoffs.
Okay,
it was most of us.
My apologies for not being aware of that, but I feel like there was at least more discussion around the 3 teams you mentioned. Milwaukee with their 60 wins and league MVP, Boston with their all that talent, but just hadn't achieved at the level. But Kyrie told us to wait till the playoffs. And Philly was like, man, their starting lineups only played 10 games together, but they have 4 potential All-Stars if they get it all together. I think there was, they did, I don't want to say sneak up on you, but they were at least underrated clearly throughout this year and going into the playoffs. They didn't sneak up on you.
Well, Mannix and a few other people did pick Toronto. But, Jenna, you are correct. there were 3 sexier stories when we started the playoffs in the East alone.
Yeah.
They were 3 sexier. Toronto was not in that discussion. But also, to the people that cover the game's credit, they didn't have a lot of chemistry playing together. We hadn't seen them. So the team they became in the playoffs, because they were forever evolving. Last night, we just saw the last chapter of it. They were evolving. First game against the Magic. They lose. They're down in the Philly series. They're evolving as a team. The Giannis series, man, they're down 0-2 against the best team in the NBA. So they're evolving as a team. So we're supposed to miss that part.
The reason I believed in Toronto to start the season was because they were a 59-win team that on paper got better. The question mark was Kawhi and his health and what was he going to look like coming back after a year off. But he came back and he looked great. And the reason I believed in Toronto in the playoffs is that with Kawhi healthy, you just go back to the last game he played in the postseason with San Antonio, that conference finals game where they were up, 20 on Golden State in the first half. He goes down with injury and everything unravels for the Spurs. So you knew coming in, this guy was a great playoff performer.
I know that this just happened, but you can't help but spin this forward a second and say, is this the same team we see next year? Can they run this back with the? Is this the same Raptors team?
You could honestly have, like, if Kawhi leaves and Masai Ujiri stays, which again we don't know because he could wind up in Washington. This could be like Pascal Siakam and a bunch of guys not making the playoffs next year. That's the reality of this situation. They've always known in Toronto that if Kawhi left, the whole thing could come down.
But they were okay with
100%.
Like, that's the reason they were the team that, Boston had the opportunity to trade Jaylen Brown and others for Kawhi. They didn't want to because they weren't trying to have a hard reset. Toronto knew the DeMar DeRozan, Kyle Lowry Raptors had a ceiling. Even if LeBron goes west, they have a ceiling. So they trade for Kawhi, hoping best case scenario this and he stays. But even if you get close to this and he doesn't stay, what that allows you to do is build around your young guys. But if he does stay, Jenna, Chris, if he stays, they have to be the favorites to win the title, right?
Yes, but I would be very, very surprised about that. I spend a lot of time in Canada. My brother still lives up there, married to a Canadian after coaching there. My son plays in the CFL, been up there 7 years. Their summers are real short. All right? Enjoy. All right? Toronto Raptors, enjoy the celebration, enjoy the parade, enjoy the champagne.
Because you don't think Kawhi's coming back?
I just said the summers are short.
Okay.
And I would say Kawhi Leonard, his stint there in Canada
could be similar to the summer.
Exactly.
And if it was, it's worth it.
Just real quick, Masai Ujiri, since he got there, has been kind of chomping at the bit to rebuild anyway. Dwayne Casey just kept winning too many games
it's a perfect
for them
rebuild.
to tear the things apart. So he has been chomping at the bit to rebuild anyway. He'd prefer to keep this whole group together, but if he stays, I don't think he would be so. I think rebuilding would be okay with him.
And if you rebuild, you rebuild around Pascal Siakam, a guy who in Game 5 got benched for the final 9 minutes because his coach wasn't pleased with his defense. Did he hang his head? Did he get pouty? No. He gave you 26 and 10, the biggest basket in Raptors history, and he goes into next year, even if they don't have Kawhi, as in the argument for best young player in the entire Eastern Conference.
All right, much more from Game 6. Warriors lost more than just the game and the series last night. They lost Klay Thompson as well, suffering a torn ACL in the third quarter. He is now likely out till February or March of 2020. Warriors lost KD and Klay to major injuries in back-to-back games. Here's Steph Curry on his fallen Splash brother.
You think about the person and the guy and how much he loves to play the game, and that's the only thoughts you have. It's really not about, what it means in terms of playing basketball. It's just I'm more concerned about him as an individual and hoping that he's all right.
Everybody thinks it's kind of end of us. That's just not smart. We're not done yet. We lost this year. Clearly, just wasn't our year. But it's how the cookie crumbles sometimes. But yeah. I hear a lot of that noise. It's the end of a run and all that jazz. I don't see it happening, though.
All right, so let's go with what Dre was talking about there. Does Klay Thompson's injury derail where the Warriors were going, both next year and let's look a couple years out?
I think short term, absolutely. I don't know how they can win at this level next year, even if Klay comes back in February or March. He's not going to be the same player next season. It's going to take him time to work himself back into game shape, get his rhythm back, and you can't do that in high-pressure type of situations. Long-term, I think the biggest question I have long-term has nothing to do with Klay, who I think they're going to max out in a long-term contract. I think they'll offer Kevin Durant a long-term contract. He won't take it, but I think they'll offer it to him. The question I have is with Draymond Green. And what do you do with him at this point? Because next year, it's kind of a wash. Like, wherever you finish is not going to be with a trophy at the end of the season. And then you've got Draymond Green in 2020 entering free agency. And Draymond Green, for all his talents right now, is something of a depreciating asset. He's a guy that is still an elite defender against fours, but is not the same as he was against threes and some fives. He's just slowly declining, not at a high level, but slowly declining defensively every single year. Offensively, we have seen his numbers from three-point range go completely downhill. And those aren't the kind of things that, generally speaking, improve as you get a little bit older. So if you're looking at Draymond Green this offseason, this might be an opportunity for the Warriors to turn around and try to trade him for multiple pieces that make sense around Klay and around Steph for the long term. If you can get 2 or 3 pieces for Draymond Green and then you start looking at 2020 and beyond, that to me is something that has to be considered.
So I think it absolutely is something that has to be considered. I do not know the team around the league that looks at Draymond Green and says 1 year of him, because that's all that's left on his contract, at nearly $20 million is worth multiple rotation NBA players. He is amazingly valuable for this team in this system with those two guys, with Steph and Klay playing with him. His value on a bad team is non-existent. His value on a good team, you better have a ton of shooting. Like, so who are the teams that fit in that little Goldilocks zone of they're good enough to need him, they wouldn't mind taking a risk on a 1-year rental on him, and they have the assets to make the Warriors better. I thought you were going to say you max out Klay this summer and then Draymond potentially walks in a year and you use that, you finally have some cap space. That, to me, I think is a plausible reality they could be facing a year from now.
But even if you sell Draymond low and get 60 cents on the dollar and you can get maybe a draft pick back in return, if you're going to let him walk anyway, which I think is something that has to be considered as well, because giving him a 4-year full max, that's tough when he's going to be in his mid-30s when that contract comes up. I mean, you have to make hard decisions in this league. And Draymond has been the heart and soul of a 3-time NBA champion, but just you don't pay for past performance. You've got to look at this, practically, and giving him that kind of money is a lot. So I would think about, even if you're not getting dollar for dollar value, I would think about trying to get a draft pick and maybe one young player back in return for a Draymond Green.
And Nick, how old is Draymond now?
He will be 30 by the early next season.
Yeah, his next contract will be in his 30s.
And how old is Klay?
Klay will be 30 the next time we see him play basketball.
Okay, I'm just going to tell you, all 30s aren't equal. Klay has the type of body that I believe will respond, and he's going to have a long career. He is not a smaller guard. Smaller guards, they don't age well. But Draymond is not a great athlete. Draymond was never a high recruit. He was never one of the elite players in college. He is a system player. And as you could see, when they don't have as much shooting or spacing around the court, Draymond Green in last night's game, 8 turnovers. In 4 of the finals games, he had 5 turnovers. All right, so that was one of the reasons why. So even though he did make a tremendous comeback after Kevin Durant, you could see that him leading the break, you could see him adding things to their offense. But, man, when you move Kevin Durant off that team, Draymond Green, I'm with you. He's not going to get better than what he is. You can't max him out. I would have him on the team next year and have him hit free agency in 20, because that's what's best. If they max out Draymond, they are limited as far as Steph and what he can do the rest of his career.
But
Chris.
why not then try to get 50 cents on the dollar for him?
Because you're saying next year's a lost cause anyway.
I think next year's a lost cause anyway.
I believe next year, because I just believe that what's happened in the last 5 days in the NBA, I believe not only athletics, but it's going to change the NBA. Klay, when I come back next year, I'm a 4th or a 5th seed. How fast do I rush back to get on the court? See, I want to start talking to players and see. We watched Kevin Durant go down. We saw Klay go down and the overall effect. We heard players like Aaron Rodgers talking about it, Tiger Woods talking about it. It's going to be a part. How much am I going to put myself out there to jeopardize my career, risking injury?
And while I think most NBA fans understandably hate these two words, load management, we just saw the Finals MVP only play 60 games in the regular season because he was pacing himself. And we saw a team that had been to 4 straight NBA Finals, 4 straight 100-game seasons. Everybody gets hurt because they weren't able to pace themselves. Go ahead, Steve.
And NBA coaches, watch the NBA playoffs. Be careful who you try to put 40 minutes on. There's one LeBron James our whole career. There's been one Michael Jordan. The rest of those guys, they can't take that type of load on their body in the playoffs. We have seen guys. Kevin Durant, I believe part of the overall thing was they started playing him 40 minutes. Kevin Durant don't have the
43 minutes.
They don't have the body to play 40 minutes a game, and we started seeing other guys get forced into that. To me, I like to see that trend going down compared to going up, Chris.
I agree with you, but Nick, I think if you lower the price on Draymond Green, the market becomes robust for a guy like that. I mean, look, take like Oklahoma City for an example, like a team that's desperate to win right now. You plug Draymond Green into that group, and you trade one of your young pieces and maybe a future draft pick. You have got high-intensity players in Russell Westbrook and Draymond Green.
Oh, I'm not trying to say it's no value. If we're talking about...
No, that was a great example you pulled right there, too.
If you're talking, if we are now saying a rotation player and a draft pick, I totally agree. The idea that
issues with multiple...
If you're going to get multiple guys that are going to come in and make an impact on your team. But just one other thing you said in the very beginning that I want to revisit quickly. You said they're max out Klay Thompson. It felt to me like Klay's representation was a little nervous that they were going to max him out before this injury. Remember, the reports are if they don't offer him a full max, he will look around. That to me was a warning shot by the agent. You're fully confident that with Klay Thompson now tearing his ACL, they're going to offer him the full max?
I'm not fully confident about anything at this point, but it just feels like Joe Lacob going into that new building is not going to want to nickel and dime.
It would be a
Klay
bad
Thompson.
look.
It really would. Like to see a guy. I mean, if you let Kevin Durant walk, I mean, Kevin Durant to that team has been kind of a mercenary over the last few years.
It's different.
Klay Thompson is interwoven into the fabric of that team. Being cheap with him coming off after what he did, Game 6 Klay and this type of thing, almost leading them back to the brink of winning another championship. It would be a terrible look if they went that way with Klay.
Let's talk about Steve Kerr and how he fits into the future of the Warriors' plans here. How good of a coach is he? Do you think he'll be back next year?
Nick brought this up during the break. I didn't even consider that Steve Kerr might not be back because even when he was going through all the back issues, you never got the sense that he was done. He was just going to find his way back onto the floor to coach that team. It would also be a pretty bad look for Steve Kerr, unless the medical issues are so prohibitive. He's dealing with more than we know right now. To walk away from Steph Curry and to walk away from Klay Thompson when this team is in this current position, I just don't see it. Plus, everything I know about Steve Kerr, he loves to coach.
He loves to coach. And to answer the first part of your question, how good of a coach is he? A Hall of Famer, great coach. He has all this talent, man. This team that went to the 2 NBA Finals, won 140 games in 2 regular seasons, was there under Mark Jackson. They were good, not great. He unlocked them. There's 2 reasons I think it's something to watch. One is because of the constant pain and at times agony he is in because of his back. The other one is something Cris mentioned yesterday. What is the real truth and post-mortem going to be on what happened with Kevin Durant? And who in that organization is going to be held to account? Not that Steve Kerr would be held to account in that regard, but who also internally feels terribly about that? And whether or not that has soured anyone on moving forward, especially what will now be 5 years where you know you're going to the playoffs, you're probably going to the finals, and now you're scraping to try to get to 44 wins in the 7 seed. It's different situations. So I just think it's something to monitor about how enjoyable it would be for Steve Kerr next season.
Mannix, thanks so much for being with us today.
My pleasure.
Back to Kawhi Leonard now, who took home congratulations, Kawhi, took home his 2nd Finals MVP trophy less than a year.
Number 2.
After being traded away from the Spurs after a long journey, which included doubt by some, questions of commitment by others, and some head-scratching all around, Kawhi will wake up this morning as the best player on the best team in the NBA. Here's Kawhi waxing poetic on this past year.
A lot of people were doubting me. thought I was either faking an injury or didn't want to play for a team. And that was disappointing to me that was out in the media, because I love the game of basketball. Like I always say, if we're not playing this game, if we're hurt, I mean, you're down. So me just, going through that, and, I just knew that I have to make myself happy and no one else. And I have to trust myself. And it doesn't matter what anybody has to say about me. I know who I am as a person. I know how I feel. And always just trust yourself. And that was my goal and my focus. That's how I just keep growing up as a man. And that's why I say I just think about my past life and try to learn from situations and be wise and learn from others.
Look, if you're the Raptors organization, this worked out as well as it could possibly have worked out. But see, did Kawhi now prove his doubters wrong last night?
Well, this is the thing. The people who doubted Kawhi, I'm going to give them benefit of the doubt. They didn't know him. So they'll have an opportunity to reset. Or they can just continue on the idiotic narrative that they've created based on all the false information that's out there about Kawhi. Because after watching Kawhi Leonard, forget the regular season where they took care of him, but in the postseason, if you watch him, and did you not see a player that if he could have played with San Antonio, would have played? So for me, the things that Kawhi proved to others, because I've been knowing Kawhi since he left San Diego. My agent helped recruit him. The guy that represents Kawhi happens to be my agent for 16 years in the NFL. So I know who he is. So for me, it was easier to understand how he could be misunderstood. He's not like the other superstar players, but that don't mean he don't work as hard. That don't mean he don't want the same things they want. And it doesn't mean that if you say negative things about him, it might not affect him or hurt his feelings like the other great players we've seen. And he internalized it. He realized that I am hurt. There's a lot of people out there saying things, but I'm going to prove it on the basketball court. And Toronto Raptors took a chance on Kawhi Leonard. There's a reason why he went to San Diego State. Why would a player like him? How did he get there into the NBA? He was high school basketball player of the year in California. San Diego State recruited him as a sophomore. And after he was MVP of the state tournament, then all these big schools started to recruit him. He said, no, this is the team that believed in me. They put faith in me, and I'm going to go to school there. And he's developed since then. I got a lot of respect for Kawhi because I really know who he is. He stays true to himself. He has not changed, even though this situation with Coach Popovich. Last year, Pop was like, I love you, Kawhi. I love you. You've told us to trade you. I'm going to try to trade you. I got no problem with you, but you need to know this. I'm going to trade and do what's best for San Antonio, even though I want you to be successful.
I mean, he said it right there. They thought I was faking an injury. It's the biggest indictment you can make of a pro athlete. And for a guy like Kawhi Leonard, who, unlike almost all the other superstars we've had in this league, had never really been criticized for anything. He played for a team we don't talk much about. He's incredibly quiet. We knew nothing about him. All we knew was he went about his business, was a great defensive player, was developing into a great offensive player. And the entire sports media, to a degree, flipped on him pretty quick. I wasn't as hard on him as others, but I was hard on him last year because I had 20 years of believing the Spurs. If I'm being honest, I remember arguing with you about it.
I told you.
And I had Tony Parker, who had, to me, built a good reputation in this league, coming out, and I'm like, man, if you even have teammates coming out and questioning you. I learned a little bit, not only from that, but from this year. It wasn't anyone's name on it, but Kevin Durant had teammates coming out and questioning him. How hard is he really? And he let that noise get to him. Well, I don't know if that happened, if he let the noise get to him, but ostensibly, something forced him onto the court. Now he popped his Achilles. Quite in sports, one of the cool things about sports, one of the clean things about sports are there winners and losers. Kawhi Leonard is the winner of this. Kawhi Leonard gets to have won the entire situation. He trusted his body. He did not get peer pressured or browbeaten into putting himself out there in a compromised state. He is now going to hit true free agency, get to play wherever he wants, and do it holding the title of reigning Finals MVP and two-time NBA champion.
Where do you think Kawhi ends up next season? See. Because we have so
I
much
believe
time
number
left.
2, he gets his second MVP, joining the class 1 of 3. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar did it with the Milwaukee Bucks, did it with the Lakers. LeBron did it with Cleveland, also did it with the Miami Heat. He has the opportunity. I believe he goes back to Los Angeles, true to his roots, Southern California, born in Compton. I believe he's with the Clippers next year.
So you think he and LeBron next year will have a chance, either one of them, to become the first player ever with 3 Finals MVPs for 3 different teams?
Yep, it's going to be a race. Who's the first to number 3?
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern. For Cris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.